Hi, I'm Paul. For this video, I just want to talk about some of the things which I've been talking about in some of my prior videos to try and help you not get confused with what I was saying. Because in some of the videos, I've been talking about that this reality is a dream and it's not real and it doesn't exist and it's an illusion. But what I'm actually saying is it does exist, it's not an illusion, it's real. It's just the way that you look at it. By the way, when I say illusion, what I mean is an illusion is something is still real, but it's just not as what it appears to be. And when I say that everything's a dream, everything in reality is made up in mind, in your mind. I mean, that is true. So even though it's a dream, it's perfectly real, as long as you know that it's only a dream. But there is nothing else other than the dream. So a lot of people in non-duality who are hunting for non-duality under the belief that when you find non-duality, then everything's going to disappear and everything's finally going to be okay and I'm not going to suffer anymore. And some of that's partly real and some of it's not. One of the most common misconceptions of non-duality is that when you finally reach non-duality, kill the ego or whatever, then thoughts will disappear. I won't have any thoughts anymore because it's these thoughts what are giving me suffering. And that's not really correct, because even when you do reach ego death or non-duality, then the thoughts still do continue. But there's a difference, because they do appear to be separated, or there is some separation from you and the thoughts, so therefore they don't really have any effect. But yeah, they still happen. I mean, even emotions still happen when you've reached that point. Maybe not nowhere near as much, but they do still happen. But if we take a look into what emotions are, because I don't believe that they're entirely real as such. So I believe emotions really are just the voice in your head which is talking, creating stories and creating things like guilt and shame. So if we look at emotions, let's just say you sat on a chair like I am, and I can feel the chair on my back, and I would say that's real. But from that feeling of a chair on my back, I can then talk to myself, and I could say something along the lines of, well, I'm sat down, I can feel the chair on my back, but I feel guilty because I should be washing the pots or I should be doing something else. And then there's the emotion of guilt. It's essentially just a story that we tell ourselves based on the idea of what we should or shouldn't do or supposed to do. And if it's as easy as to say, I feel guilty because I should be doing this, then it's pretty easy for us to say, oh, okay, then it doesn't matter about the pots, I'm not bothered, I could do them later, and then the guilt goes away. And then the emotion disappears. So I believe emotions can be helpful for many people, can guide us to better things, but quite often they create suffering. But the emotions are just really created from the thoughts in the head. I've had some people talk to me before on things like, I have a memory of when I was younger and I got hit by a car. and this memory keeps on cropping up every time I see cars and I get close to them, and it creates a horrible feeling. Well, good. It should, really, because, you know, you've learnt your lesson from getting hit by a car, and now you've been cautious. The problem is how you cling on to the story. It's that what creates the suffering, the thinking of it, the holding on to it. And it's very similar to emotions, I guess, that we do seem to like to cling on, to hold on to our thoughts. Some of them much stronger than others. Many people like to hold on to horrible thoughts, and for some reason just can't seem to let go of them. I think this is what the ego is. So when people believe that you get rid of the ego, which means you get rid of thoughts, it's not true. The thoughts aren't the ego. The ego does appear to be the thing that clings on to the thoughts and makes it part of me. Because when the ego does fall away, and you reach non-duality, then it does seem that the thoughts still arrive and pass by like we blow in the wind, and it doesn't really seem to affect you because you don't cling on to them. That seems to be quite obvious when it happens. Suppose like being in a park somewhere, and in the distance there's a dog barking, and you don't hear the dog, so it doesn't bother you. And then someone says, "Can you hear that dog? It's doing my head in." And then all of a sudden you can hear it. Now you're clinging on to it. You're focusing on to it to make it a part of you. And then you can put stories in your head. Oh, it's doing my head in as well now. And then you make it even worse. So the idea is to let go. So thoughts do arrive, but don't cling on to them. Don't worry about them. And like I say, we seem to be quite obsessed and clinging on to things. I did speak to somebody a while ago, and I was trying to explain to them that everything is a creation inside of your mind. So there's nothing that isn't a creation inside of your mind, because we don't have access to anything else. All of our experiences are inside of our mind. And I tried explaining to him that all your experiences are in your mind. And as an example, I said that if I was to have a cat in front of me, and I could remove this cat from your experience by either removing your experience or by removing the cat. So I said, if I remove the cat, then you no longer experience the cat. And I said also, if I remove your experience from the cat, like I turn you around, then you no longer experience the cat. And he said, yeah, but I do still experience the cat. And I said, how? And he said, well, I still remember the cat was there, so I know it's still there. So I said, well, where's that memory of a cat? And he says, in my mind. The point is everything is in my mind. But the other point I'm trying to make is how we still try to cling on. So he was still clinging on to that cat being there. I mean, it was his choice that. He could have just let it go and said, okay, I don't have an experience of a cat, and that's that. And a lot of our past traumas and memories, we do the same with. For some reason, we just cling on to them. And we find it very difficult to let it go, no matter how much suffering it gives us. So I was talking about, in this video, how nothing is real. And like I say, it's not quite literally nothing's real, because we do create everything in our mind, and that is a dream. But that dream is real. And no matter how much you go into non-duality, you won't get rid of that dream. But there is one thing that you can do, and that's to separate from the dream. You become aware that the dream is only a dream, and you don't tend to worry. You don't seem to hold on and cling on to them thoughts, because the ego is not there trying to create your reality all the time, trying to make it real. When I've been ill for a few days now, And when I look at the illness, or as I've been ill each day, I wake up every day and my illness is different. It just, changed each day. One day I've got a fever and another day it's something different. But I've just been looking at that as interesting. Yeah, okay, I kind of don't feel great. It's not comfortable. But I'm not telling myself all the time, oh, I'm so ill, I feel horrible, or I wish I could do this. And I'm just observing it. I'm observing my illness day to day, and I find it interesting. But it's different. It changes all the time. One minute I feel this, and then I feel that later. And it's just interesting to watch it. And I know that sounds silly. But when the ego falls away, we start to look at everything like that. Everything's interesting. And some of the things you've never really seen before. Like, you close your eyes, and you see black. And in life, when you've had an ego, you see black, and all you go is, I'm bored, that's it. What's so fascinating about that? When your ego falls away, it's fascinating. Yeah, it's only blackness, but it's brilliant. Same with when it rains. Same with just looking at a tree. Because you've got no chatter in your head all the time that distracts you, you're able to focus so much more on the thing that's actually there. Not the past, not the future, not the description of it, not the idea of it, not what I could do for you, what I can't do for you. But you just pay attention to what's actually there. And you start to see the beauty in everything, even illness. I remember learning this through insight quite a while ago. I called it, at the time, the innocence of a child. And the reason why I called it that was I was still trying to do self-awareness and work out what's really going on at the time. So I was quite often questioning everything in my head. And I remember being young child, and when you do things like you go out into a foggy day, to a young child, it's like, whoa, this is amazing. And there's just so much excitement to see a foggy day. And as you get older, you just don't feel these things anymore. Even as a young child looking at a mountain somewhere, it's fascinating. And you get older and a mountain just doesn't mean anything anymore. And I really wanted to work out why. Why can I not get these feelings back as a child? What is the difference? Probably took me about 2 years of insight just to work out that one. And what I discovered with it was what we tend to do as adults. Say you've seen a mountain over and over again. And in the end, instead of focusing on the mountain, we start focusing on the talk inside of our head. We talk about a mountain. We say, oh, we've seen this before. It's nothing new. It's just a mountain, or, this is a fabulous mountain, or this is a famous mountain. Everyone talks about this mountain. But all this talk in your head, you're not seeing the real mountain. You're not exploring what's actually there. Maybe you seen the mountain yesterday, so today it's just not that interesting. So you're not paying attention to it. You're thinking too much. So the innocence of a child I kind of described as just to be present. I think maybe in non-duality we'll probably call this unconditional love, because you're at one with it in the present moment. But through my learning, I call it the innocence of a child, because children just want to explore what's really there. They've not got their own take on it. They've not got their own description of it. They just want to explore. I don't really know what that has to the original talk of the video, that nothing's real. I don't know, maybe it does help, I don't know. But anyway, try to be careful of a lot of people who talk about non-duality and say it's not real. I heard somebody say to one of the non-dual teachers about God, and the response instantly was back, well, there's no such thing as God. That's really not helpful to answer with questions like that. When you're talking about something like God, the first thing you should ask is, what do you mean by God? What's your description of God? How does that sit with you? Because if I said I believe in God, you couldn't even guess what I'm actually referring to. So we've got to respect that people have their own dream. In some ways, they're probably you, but I don't think that's that helpful. So we all have our own dream, and that dream is real. We can't escape it. No matter how much non-duality we do, we're still going to be living in a dream. The only thing you can do is try and separate yourself more from these thoughts, emotions, and ideas. Still good to have thoughts sometimes, still good to have emotions sometimes, but don't cling on to them. Which, like I say, it's the ego that clings on. It's trying to find the ego and spot the ego and come face to face to the ego. And then the ego starts to fall away at that point. Anyway, I think I'm probably waffling on too much. I think I've made my point, so thanks very much for listening.